So we're back again with Hours Hyperlocal, and it's a bit of an impromptu theme this week. But we're kind of looking at the stuff that hyperlocal bloggers, producers do, as well as that. And I don't mean their kind of day job. I mean the other kind of community type stuff that they get involved in or drawn into, or maybe were already doing beforehand anyway. Maybe that's what got them into it. That's what we're going to have a chat about. We may have some other people joining us, but at the moment we've got Steph and James. So maybe if you could just introduce yourself whilst I post the YouTube link on Twitter.
Okay.
Either.
I'm Steph. Hello. It's me and James are both waiting for each other to start then. I'm Steph. I run the WV11 website with James. At the moment I'm banished to the bedroom so that we don't get a feedback loop because James is on the computer downstairs. Yeah, and we do a lot of other things aside our hyperlocal, which I'm sure we'll tell you all about in the conversation.
Yeah, as Steph says, I'm James, the other half of WV11.co.uk. Our hyperlocal site is in Wensfield, which is in Wolverhampton in the West Midlands. We've been running the site for almost 4 years now, through the site we've become involved in a hell of a lot of other stuff locally. So I'm sure we can kind of give some feedback on that shortly.
Okay. So yeah, you are. I was going to say two sides of the same coin, but not really, are you? What are you? I was trying to think of another analogy of how you operate, but I don't actually. Do you kind of split the workload between yourself?
We tend to be interchangeable. So yeah, sometimes we'll both go to stuff. Sometimes one of us will, and sometimes the other one of us. Yeah, it depends on who's available, and so it does kind of get split, but it's not you're going to do this and I'm going to do that. It's just whoever's available at the time, and if we're both available, we both go.
Yeah. Hi, it is Guy, isn't it? Sorry. Is that right? Can you hear us? Ah.
Okay, he's mouthing at us.
No, Mike. Can't hear you. It's all right. Okay. Remember, you can type. There's a chat type thing as well. No. Okay. Anyway, yes, and I suppose I should declare my interest in that. I live in WV11 land as well. I live in Wensfield, so I'm kind of one of the audience or community, whatever you want to call me, of Stephen James' output. And a guy I believe runs Bitton Park, which is Southampton based. He'll either nod or shake his head at this point. He's left, so he may come back in a minute because I think maybe having mic problems or something like that. So, before you started doing WV11, were you the kind of people that thought you would be doing something like this, if you know what I mean, or was it quite a new experience to get yourself into?
I think for me it was quite a new thing. I hadn't really done much in the way of any kind of citizen activism of any sort really before that. I'd blogged a bit personally. Had various hobbies, but not anything that was this kind of community focused, if you like. So for me, it was certainly a new thing. I think Steph had done a bit of stuff in terms of she worked as a volunteer as a youth worker for a while, so she can probably tell you a little bit about that.
Well,
But James, you'd not done kind of stuff like get on a stage, put yourself out there, public speaking, or anything like that.
No, I mean I've played in a band, but that's not quite the same. So
but
it's performed in that sense, but not in terms of not done anything with any kind of real kind of social aim behind it, other than a hobby for my own kind of personal gratification, if you like.
Yeah. And Steph, what about you?
Well, I kind of, as James said, I mentioned he was a little bit wrong in that I wasn't a volunteer youth worker. It did start out that I was going to be a volunteer position, but I did actually get paid to be a youth worker for a while on the estate we now live on, a national park. And aside from that, I did used to get involved with organising things with the school, because obviously we've got a son that's quite young, and when they threatened, well, when they closed my son's school, then we did get involved with a campaign to save the school. So, we can't. Yes, I was involved in the community, but nowhere near on the level that we are now.
Mm.
I mean, I suppose we should really start by telling you exactly what else we do outside of WV11 for this to make some kind of sense.
Yeah.
Because everything kind of evolved by accident through WV11.
And actually, as you're doing this, if any of it has relevant URLs, if either of you want to stick them in the text chat, that's kind of what we're things we're dumping in there, just to collect and.
Okay, so how's this sound, Dave? If I quickly run down the list of some of the stuff we do, you stick the URLs in, and then you can elaborate.
By all means, yeah.
Okay, so we started off by going to the PACT meetings. We started off going to PACT meetings as residents, but then that evolved into us live tweeting from the event. So we kind of just stopped going to just our PACT meeting and go to both meetings that run in the area to live tweet from them, so that the content that is, the conversation that takes place at PACT gets to a much wider audience. We then held an online PACT meeting, which, yes, that was to do with the site. That was more about PACT than it was WV11. PACT, for anybody that doesn't know, with Partners and Community Together, there are police liaison come tasking meetings where we set police priorities for the areas. From that, we joined the local neighbourhood partnership, and we've both been with the LNP for about 18 months. And now James is actually the chair and I'm the vice chair of that group. The LNP is a community, but they're a council department that have a community board. So we set priorities for the area. There's a small budget that comes through the council, but more importantly, it's about community activism. It's about making things happen. So the Christmas light switch-ons, it's about supporting other projects and enabling people to make things happen in their communities. From that, we became involved with the Community First panel. So James and I both sit on the Community First panel, although because we both represent one organisation, which in this instance is WV11, we have one vote between us. And James has the casting vote on that because he's the panel lead. And the Community First panel, it is a funding panel by the Community Development Foundation, where there's a pot of money that goes to deprived areas, and Wentzfield South was considered a deprived area. So it is a community panel that sets priorities for the area again, and you can have community groups in the community applying for different levels of money. It's only a small pot of money, and it all has to be match funded, so we have to promote the front money. We have to take in and appraise all the applications. We have to put them forward to CDF if we think they're going to be worthy and meet the criteria and meet the application and our priorities, and that they give them the money. We also sit on a working group for a community art project with Bentley Bridge Section 106 money, which is when the council gives a contract or awards some land or some business to somebody, there's a proportion of money that goes into a pot called Section 106, and that goes into community. And this 106 money had been earmarked for an art piece. And so James and I both sit on the panel that was a working group really that helped go through the commissioning process to commission artists. We're helping with the consultation for with the wider community about what they'd like to see. And so yeah, it's just there's lots of different things we're involved with.
So that's 3 or 4 things already that you've listed there.
Yeah.
So, is that right? So and how did each of those come about? How were you drawn into them, or did it not feel like you were being drawn in? Was it people were seeing visibly what you were doing with WV11 and thought they'd be good to be involved in this, let's ask them?
I think that's pretty much what happened. We began, we set the site up off our own back completely and decided we wanted to do something just to plug what was going on in the area locally and pick up on some of the positives that the kind of traditional press maybe missed with kind of neighbourhood level stories. And quickly, various different people from the council, from the police, kind of picked up on what we were doing and were very interested because I think they saw us partly as a way of kind of getting their message out there in a less traditional format. And they also saw that kind of very local information. If you want to find out about any service within a specific neighbourhood or ward in Wolverhampton, you have to go to the City Council's website and sift through the entire city's information to find your local information. So the people that were working for the council in our area realised that this was actually a really good resource for people to find information out. I think they kind of saw us getting involved, and from there we just got asked to go to more and more events or to cover more and more things, to turn up at more and more sessions and various different things that were going on, and it kind of grew from there. I think that's certainly how it felt to me.
Yeah. And so when you were kind of when people were drawing you into that or inviting you to that, was it something that you were kind of leaping at or thinking, well, that's interesting that this is happening more and more often?
I think I certainly leapt at it straight away, partly because it was an instant kind of, it was a very visual response to what we were doing with the website. The fact that somebody had found the website, taken the time to find out who was behind it, contacted them and asked them to be involved in something, obviously meant they thought what we were doing was a good thing. So it was, in a way, it was kind of, it didn't necessarily legitimise what we were doing, but it certainly made us realise, okay, we are making some difference here, a difference, which again, we didn't really set out to do. But as soon as we realised that was happening, we wanted to do as much of that as we could. I think getting that initial response is probably what kept us going. I think the first kind of 18 months were relatively slow, and we were never at a point where we were ready to kind of give it up. But there were times where we felt like we were kind of shouting into a void.
Right.
We got responses or feedback online. It was people whinging and moaning, and it was quite disheartening at times. But to then have people turn around saying, "We think what you're doing is great. Would you like to get involved in this, or could you help with that?" You kind of realise that the reason you're doing it isn't to kind of get feedback, positive feedback from people, but when you get that, you realise it's actually worth doing. All the hours you spend doing this, not wasted. People do appreciate it, even if they might not initially kind of show that online.
There is a little bit that as well. For me, it was an opportunity to get involved in a more practical way. Because obviously, it's all very well good sitting behind a keyboard and throwing things at the internet, but unless you're, for me anyway, unless I'm practically doing something, I don't feel like I'm changing anything. And one of my drivers for the website, which I know we've discussed in the previous hangout, was, I really love the community I live in, and I know we can make lots of great things happen if people work together. And this was a practical demonstration of that. And it's almost practicing what you're preaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to have an even moderately successful hyperlocal site, and I say successful, different people can't define what their success is, but you have to kind of be a part of the community that you're talking about. I think if you're on the kind of fringe and the outskirts and you're not really involved in anything, it's very hard to kind of get a real grasp and really be accepted by people and trusted by people if you're not in that community, which is why I think some of these kind of franchise type sites, unless you find someone really passionate, really committed in the community to back these sites, they're never really going to last or have the kind of a lasting effect anyway.
Yes, sorry. Occasionally you'll say things and I'll go, oh, that's interesting, and I'll think of a question to come back with. So, Guy, have you got anything to add from your experiences? Because I believe you run Hyperlocal, but other than that, I don't know if I know anything about you or what you do, or if you.
I haven't really got a grip on this conversation, to be honest.
So sorry, the conversation.
Technical issues getting in. I'm just trying to work out what the thread is, really.
Yeah. So sorry, the thread of the conversation. The theme is, I don't just do hyperlocal. I do this other stuff as well within my community. So it might be charity work, or it might be volunteering, or it might be like some kind of neighbourhood watch or neighbourhood trust. And what I'm interested in, I suppose, is kind of how that comes about, and whether the act of doing the hyperlocal site has drawn you into other things, or whether it's just that hyperlocal bloggers are those kind of people, or what really. I'm sort of quite open-minded, really.
I think a number of things I've tried to not get involved with because it's as a result of doing the website, because I tend to get drawn into doing a lot of things and going to different groups and meetings and things, and then I realise that I just can't do all these things. I can't actually be part of the things that I'm trying to cover as well. So there have been various things that I've actively said, well, actually, no, I'm not going to do this anymore, but I'm very happy to try and cover, your group that's protesting about. I mean, the airport's an example, because one of the drivers for starting one of my sites was the airport expansion, which is going, which is quite close to us.
One of my
and in the end, I just kind of felt it was just a time thing now. I just can't do everything. And the site takes an enormous, as we all know, an enormous amount of energy, basically.
No, that's interesting, because I was wondering then, as you were saying, whether you were going to say it was a time issue, or whether it's a political issue for you, or whether, and I thought you were going to say, I don't want to be drawn into becoming part of these things, because then I become and potentially skew the story that I'm then going to cover, and there's a sense of bias or in the way that you cover it. So for example, an airport story, if you were drawn into a demonstration against like a runway project or something like that, then you went to cover it, would it skew how you were covering it, and would you rather keep a distance? But it sounds like it's more of a time issue. Is that right?
I think it's it's something I've thought quite a lot about. I'm not really sure of the answer to that. I mean, I think the fact that, those things aren't, that particular issue isn't so prevalent at the moment anyway, but I think that the fact that I'm covering it at all is political, you could say, I've had those kinds of dilemmas actually, but at the end, I'll do what I want to do, really. So I can get involved in it and cover it, really. I don't know. That's a difficult one, really, to call. But I have no real. This is being recorded, isn't it? And going. Desire to necessarily cover the certain points of view, because they're already well covered. There are PR machines in place that are already giving certain points of view on certain issues, and so the fact that so there's not, I don't really owe people anything in terms of having to present this really balanced thing. That isn't necessarily why I'm doing what I'm doing and what I'm here for. If that makes sense to you. Yeah,
it's interesting. I think that kind of ties into a comment that I know that Jerome was having on last week's hangout about how the research had kind of revealed that most hyperlocals, the majority of stories have a slant one way or another. They don't tend to have a very balanced view and necessarily represent arguments from both sides. That's a cat's tail, by the way, not a strange device. I think maybe because most people who run hyperlocal sites aren't journalists, they don't think in the same way as journalists do in terms of how they would create a story and cover a story. And the fact that you're covering news, events, information, whatever you want to call it, that's in your community, you are going to have a bias on that because it's your community and you care about it, whereas if you're a journalist from another city, you probably don't. I suppose the nature of it, that happens, I think.
I suppose on one hand you could say it biases this coverage of a story to be part of the story, but on the other hand you could say, well, it embeds you within the area so that you have a better understanding of it, so you can cover it better. I don't know. Do you feel that, or?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, part of our, certainly myself and Steph, part of our kind of getting involved with various other groups locally, which are all voluntary, is that I saw it as a great way of finding out what was going on locally that we could then talk about, we could ask other people about. It seemed like a really kind of natural way to find out what was going on, you know, get involved with other groups, find out what these groups are doing, find out what the groups that they knew were doing, and that way we kind of had a wider reach in terms of not only people that we put information out to, but where we kind of sourced information from. And certainly that's definitely been the case with the Local Neighbourhood Partnership, the LNP in Wolverhampton, becoming involved in that. And whilst it's a council-based department, it is very community-focused, and they're very big on self-reliance within communities. They really encourage that, and they do all they can to support that. So although it is the council, it's kind of the less or the least kind of corporate council you can get. So a lot of the people that work within that department also are volunteers in their communities with various different things. So they have an understanding of where we're coming from and where we're doing it. And I think that has kind of, for us, it's been a lifeline in terms of linking up a whole world that we didn't really know a fat lot about. But has meant we can not only get knowledge that we can then pass on, but we can also kind of eke information out to all these people who have already kind of networked and passing it on, both online and offline.
Is there actually are other people? Is there a kind of a quite big social media network within those activities of what you're doing, or do you feel that you kind of drive it and?
No, I mean, we're normally the ones sitting in meetings going, we could take a photo of this and put it on Facebook, or we could tweet this, or we could do that. And it's interesting. I think there's kind of a split. I mean, a lot of the voluntary groups we're involved in, I would say the majority of the people involved are retired. Not all of them, but the vast majority. And they're definitely split into two camps. The one camp that wants nothing to do with technology or the internet, and they've got a phone and a letterbox wider than anything else. And then there's the other half who are really excited by this technology and want to learn more. We've run a couple of training sessions. You still got us? I'm still here.
I'm still here.
I'm still here.
Oh, maybe it's Jess we've lost. Looks like he's frozen, so we'll just keep talking. We've got a couple of training sessions with some OAPs locally, just to give them some real basic IT and internet skills, because they're really interested in using this, and I think they're coming to the realisation that this could be good for their groups. And even if you run a knitting group for pensioners on a Thursday evening, if you have a Facebook page, it might be there's a family member of someone who might like to go to that group, and they can tell them about it, and they're kind of coming round to the realisation that this isn't necessarily a big kind of bad, scary world, and they can actually use it to their advantage and the advantage of their voluntary groups. I mean, what do you think, Steph?
I would say, well, there's always, just take the example of the PACT meeting. We started tweeting from both of our PACT meetings, and at first, I remember the very first meeting we tweeted from, and the secretary of the meeting was aghast because somebody had texted to say, do you know your meeting's online already? And it was quite funny because you could see when she got the text message and you saw her reaction, and it was quite amusing. And they were really kind of anti it, but we kind of gone above everyone's head and just said, can we do this? Yes. So we just started doing it without making a big fanfare about it in the room. So they weren't anti it.
So we're back again. We had a bit of a problem there. We were recording for about 25 minutes. It may have recorded, it may not have done. When everything froze and kind of we were in the midstream, can you remember what we were talking about, or kind of where you carried on, maybe?
We were talking roughly about basically other things we got involved in via Hyperlocal, whether you had conflicts being involved in a community group and running a website that might write about that, and then also just talking about the kind of take-up of social media and online tools with a lot of voluntary groups and where that was at.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think actually what we had before is we have still got, so that's fine. What we were recording before we have still got, I believe. So yes, so conflict. I think the consensus was no. I don't think you had necessarily got conflict.
No, I don't think so. I think there are occasionally where conflict can arise, and you have to kind of deal with that. But certainly, from my point of view, the only kind of controversial topic that I've been involved in, where I'm a panel member for something, and we cover it on the website, is as you probably know, in Wolverhampton, there's a move to merge the libraries, community centres, and youth centres into community hubs across the city. It's been a fairly controversial move. But I think, on a whole, now the information actually getting out there, it's not as controversial as it first made out to be. I was asked to join a design panel in our local area to kind of shape how our hub would be set up and how it would be laid out and how all the services could work together within this. And I was at a point there where we wanted to cover this on the site, and I thought, okay, I'm asked to join this. Do I join this group, and will that kind of colour how I'm able to report it on the site? And I thought long and hard about that, and to be honest, what I came to was that it was better that I was involved and had the facts and information from the horse's mouth, as it were. I could therefore report that back to the wider community than I wasn't involved, and the best I could get second-hand information or Chinese whispers, have that to go on. So whilst there was there was a little bit of a decision to be made there, it wasn't a very hard one, to be honest, because I think it's much better to be informed and have the information, even if some of it I can't put on the site because it's sensitive and we're not at a point where we can do that. But to have it as opposed to not have it was the best option as far as I was concerned.
It's interesting because there was a point when we were doing our content analysis, and you talked about last week's session earlier, James, and actually, if anybody's interested in the content analysis that we did, Andy, this is for a Creative Citizens research project that I'm involved in. Andy and I discussed it last week at some length. And about to join us is Mr. Dave Hart, another one of the people on the Creative Citizens team. Hi, Dave. I'll kind of introduce you to what we're nattering about in a second, Dave. But one of the things that Andy had put to me as we were doing the content analysis was, did I feel I was getting involved in some kind of more, well, what we call creative citizenship as a result of doing the project, the wider project, beyond just the content analysis. And I kind of thought about it and thought, yes, it's probably unlikely that I would have been drawn into doing a charity cycle speedway race. It's unlikely that I would have started a community centre club. It's unlikely that actually there's probably not that much else I do. I suppose it's possibly unlikely.
You've helped us out with the site.
Sorry?
You've helped us out with our site.
I suppose I babysat the Facebook page for a week, didn't I? But that's.
You've written a couple of short articles and one really, really long one that we are going to get around to publishing. What was I going to say? Yeah, the and there's a creative writing group that I go to as well.
Sugar, do you know what I've just realised?
What?
No one. James, did you capture the chat room when it crashed the first time?
Oh, don't worry.
But that's fine. We can put the links back in there.
It's a shame actually that it doesn't capture it in comments somehow in the YouTube thing.
Sorry.
No, that's right. Yeah, if you want to repost things, but yeah, I mean, similarly, getting out there and putting myself out there as a writer with a creative writing group is potentially similar. But actually, Dave, have you got your mic on?
Yeah, I have now.
Yeah. No. So what we're talking about really is, and it was inspired by for some reason my idea of it was inspired by the Trevor and Simon catchphrase from Saturday Morning Kids TV, where they say, "I don't do duvets."
I'm too young for that. I don't know what you're referring.
No, but so today it's kind of like I don't just do hyperlocal, I do this other stuff as well,
Okay.
and it's about all the creative citizenship type things that people get drawn into, whether they like it or not. And interestingly, a guy here from Bitton Park was saying that actually he's kind of made a bit more of a conscious effort in terms of his time, which to not get drawn into too many things. Is that fair, guys? Sorry, I'm paraphrasing there, aren't I? But
Yeah,
yeah. Sorry.
that's my comment. Yeah.
But Dave, you're kind of obviously a researcher in hyperlocal, but you also run one yourself as well. Do you get drawn into? Either positively or negatively doing extra bits that are kind of tangential?
Well, the first thing to say is that Bourneville Village was my extra bit. So when I started it, it was not really related to work at all. It was the and in fact, in some ways, I think I've said it before in one of these hangouts, it's difficult to, or even slightly uncomfortable for me to be describing it as my media practice, in the same way journalism lecturers still do a bit of journalism, and journalism, is quantified in particular ways, output on TV or in press or whatever. So, so in fact, I did this for quite a period, really not talking about it in the context of work at all. And in fact, as an aside, it's about 3 months ago. So I've been doing this 3 years. But 3 months ago, Dubber, Andrew Dubber, I work with Andrew Dubber, have done for a long time now. He happened upon the Bourneville site as he was cycling through and declared it a kind of new thing. And I didn't say anything. I just felt like, for fuck's sake, I've done this. And by that stage, I had talked about it at work. So it's he did a cycle ride on a Saturday and cycled through Bourneville, and I don't know, maybe he was just searching around the web when he was here having a cup of coffee or whatever, in the
right, I see. I thought you meant you had some kind of insane augmented reality overlay. So if you actually cycle through,
no, don't give me.
There's like the website drops over it.
No, so the point I was making, this was my, if you like, civic-minded thing, to do the website, and then it's transformed because it was a thing that also was interesting in particular ways. It's transformed into a work thing, and it's tied up within both PhD and the research project. So, and so in some ways, I now have a kind of guilt around my lack of other things now that this has become work. If you see what I mean. So I don't tend to participate in local ward meetings or even the neighbourhood police meetings, largely because I can actually report on those without participating. The minutes are good generally. I can tell stories from those minutes. I feel satisfied that in telling stories from those decisions, that's an awful lot more than journalism usually does. I've never bought into the journalists. Proper journalists always went to those council meetings that are too boring. And well, they didn't really. They just say they did. They might have gone to cabinet, but they never went to ward meeting. So me pulling out minutes out of a ward meeting and putting them on the web, extracting them from Birmingham City Council's unnavigatable system is a form of civic duty. So I'm in the opposition of, in a way, deciding that, or coming to terms with my lack of participation in my neighbourhood. So the other things I do are what I run the local running club's website because I'm I'm on the committee. I'm about to resign from the committee, and I run with them, and that actually works as a nice little side web project actually. So
but do you see that thing, that the running club thing, is that the kind of thing you were doing before anyway? And do you see it as being sort of relatively unconnected to the fact that you do the hyperlocal?
No, actually, no. I only joined the committee afterwards and became the web person because actually, partly because I wanted another web project. So
yeah.
I treat some of this stuff, I think I've said before as well, as web projects on the side where I can learn new stuff. So we set up an online payment system via quite a nifty WordPress plugin on the Bourneville site, and we keep our data on a Google spreadsheet, and it all works magically. It took quite a bit to get it to work magically, and it was a nice little project, and I learned quite a bit. I even had to hack around some PHP code, which is alien to me largely. So things that force me to learn little bits on the web is quite a good way, and it's also an approach that I take with students. I say you need a little project where you can break things, and the impact is less maybe than if you're working on a paid-for basis for a client. So.
But that's probably a relatively common reason for people to get into doing these web projects a lot of the time. That it kind of it's like a tinkering project for a lot of people, isn't it? And
I think just to go back to the other point, I am, to coin your phrase, a hyperlocal. So this is Jerome's phrase from a conference we were at. I am of the view that this is possible to do at some level, and not at some level, and I consider this a level below the kind of involvement and community engagement that WV11 and B31 do. But at some level, you can do this and make a difference and manage it within the context of your other aspects of your life, and manage it if you're not the kind of person who feels entirely comfortable in those kinds of spaces where you're with other community members, or other community members are looking at you as the person who might have opinions on stuff. So in some ways I could write all this up as if I'm testing out a theory about the bedroom hyperlocal blogger, rather than just being lazy.
Yeah. I was just going to add one thing. So that it's interesting because we can think of it as kind of varying levels of doing stuff, of engagement. Do you think, on a graph, that if you've got on one level, I'm doing more stuff, that it is always adding a little bit more to the community, or it's always offering something additional, or do you think there's ever a situation where I do very little and people respond to that, but it somehow has some negative effect because of the way it's... I'm not saying you do it badly, but somebody could do it very tangentially, and then that might end up being a news resource somehow that is not damaging, but doesn't tell the whole story. If Andy was here, I'm not saying he would agree with me, but he might be able to better phrase what I'm saying, because I think it speaks to some of his discussion about balanced sources, for example.
I think you could abuse your position with running one of these sites if you wanted to. I think we're in a point now where we've built up a following of a certain size, and if we really felt that there was a certain local topic that we felt strongly one way or the other about, we could probably influence people to a degree because of the trust they have in what we do. So yeah, it's definitely, there is that, there's always that kind of risk that could happen, I guess, and maybe we'll all be fooled one day and somebody will come along and seem like they're doing it all for the right reasons, and in the end it will be so they can get a piece of land off somebody or planning permission turned over, or vice versa. Who knows? I think there's definitely that aspect there. I think it's interesting, just touching on what Dave was saying, that he's not felt he's needed to get involved in various groups and go to various meetings because he's able to get the information online and kind of just republish it, or get the bare bones and then put some meat on it and put it out there. For us, it was certainly we couldn't get the information. If we wanted to cover stuff, we had to go and get involved and roll our sleeves up, sort of thing. So that was, without it being a deliberate aim, that was definitely something that motivated us. We struggled to find out what was going on, and online there was very little. I mean, Wolverhampton is coming along in terms of its digital kind of footprint, if you like, but compared to other cities of its size and bigger, which obviously Birmingham is a much bigger city, the kind of online footprint, the digital footprint, is very, very small. I mean, we're one of kind of 3 sites that would class themselves as hyperlocals in a city of 250,000 people, which I don't think that's very many. So I think there just wasn't it wasn't the done thing. You know, we still go to meetings, and I talk about, well, maybe we could put these minutes online, and there's looks of shock in the room. It's like, minutes online, you know, there's the most alien thing on earth. So from our point of view, unfortunately, we couldn't get that info. We had to kind of go and join these groups and go to the meetings.
No, it's interesting that similarly, I'm a member of the committee for our local community centre, and there were discussions around kind of how can we make the community centre more visible to the community and to the people in Wednesfield, when essentially it's one half of the library, and hundreds of people walk past it every day because it's next to Sainsbury's, but people don't really know the community centre's there. Yeah. And the only web presence it has is a Wolverhampton City Council webpage, like a static page, which has some information on it. And I said, well, is there a Facebook group or anything like that? And again, it seemed people that understood what Facebook was and Facebook pages were responsive to it. It initially seemed like an alien concept. So I've gone and set that up, and we haven't got hundreds of people, but of the 40 people that we've got there, a few people have joined and responded and said at what time is the Pilates or whatever. So it's having like an impact of some kind beyond what they've already got. But sometimes I think it probably takes somebody new to be involved and just kind of pull back a bit and go, oh, look, there's this bit of the picture as well. There's you can do stuff online and all these kind of things.
It's funny you could say that, Des, because that's part of the conversation that you missed when the stream went down. Because that was something you asked about, you know, how was the digital received, and was it, you know, we were just saying if we could take a look at us tweeting from the PACT meetings, you know, we could not get minutes from the PACT meetings because frequently they weren't given out till the day before the next meeting, because they were or at the meeting, just so somebody could say, yeah, that's accurate, and that they would nothing ever happened with them. And when we first started tweeting from PACT meetings, it was regarded with suspicion, and it really was like, what are they doing? And it's now, you know, this so ever long later that actually it's expected now that we'll be there and we're going to do this, to the point where the LNP have picked it up and are tweeting from meetings across the city. So it's now this has become standard, but it did take us almost going in underneath the radar and going, well, we're just going to give this a try, and doing it. And sometimes it is, and that goes back to like Dave's point. Dave doesn't need to be in his meeting to get the information. We did because it wasn't there. And in my day job, I see the difference between the way Wolverhampton and Birmingham, the civic online activity, from police officers, from community workers, from council officers, all the way down to people on the street. There is just so much more in Birmingham. And I know people in Birmingham are frustrated because it's not as much as they want. Come to Wolverhampton to see what there is, because there's next to nothing. So you kind of have to be in that network to get the information, or there's nothing you can do about it.
This might be a good time to plug Makeshift as well. I mean, the easiest thing might be just to what's the web address? Oh gosh, I can't remember.
Makeshift.org.
Makeshiftwolverhampton.wordpress.com.
Okay.
There you go.
I'll do the chat.
Yeah, you stick it in the chat, right? We've actually, excitingly, we usually only have 1 or 2 live viewers, but we've got 5 live viewers watching the stream at the moment. I'm intrigued to know who they are. Another thing I've just stuck in the chat is Mark from Like More Life was going to join us, but he's actually busy tonight with a new thing that they've been doing more recently, which is covering council meetings, but by pointing a video camera at them. And until recently, I think it was a couple of months ago, because he was talking about it in one of the first Hyperlocals, but until recently they were using Bambuser. And tonight is the first night they are actually doing it via a Google Hangout, and they're using multiple laptops to create a kind of a 2-camera effect in streaming this. So That's why he's not joined us, because he's looking after that. But I've put the link in for that as well. So that is lightmorelife /live, and lightmorelife is light MOOR life.co.uk/live. Just for anybody who's watching. And yes, he runs the local hyperlocal for the I guess village, isn't it? But I guess partly through technical expertise, maybe he can shed some light on it. He's kind of been involved in going to the meetings, but also has been allowed or encouraged to stream it as well, to quite a good response, I think.
I'm just watching, He's I think he's missed a trick, because he's got 3 wide shots. But you could, in theory, you could have a laptop in front of each person on the front table.
It'd be like a summit, wouldn't it? Yeah.
That's what you want. Then it'd look like those, whenever there's a sci-fi film and some anonymous group of people are making decisions about people's lives. It's like a Google Hangout, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lightmore Village full council meeting, just like that. Yeah.
I was watching that and thinking, if you've got 3 laptops, why not get a webcam and a really long USB lead and put it on like a broom handle, and then you could literally have it like a broom arm.
Well, if there were Macs, you could plug I can plug my camcorder into the FireWire, and I've got a reasonable. I can acts like a cam, but with a better lens, And, So I imagine the 10th iteration of that, if it's successful, probably looks to be a lot more sophisticated, and it's a good idea, because I imagine procuring that as a service is quite expensive. The city council, Birmingham City Council, have quite a good thing there, planning and.
He did comment initially that when he asked about doing it and why they'd never done it, they said, "Oh, somebody offered to do it, but they wanted tens of thousands of pounds to do it." And I think the first time they just used an iPhone with Bambuser. This time they're using 3 laptops with a Google Hangout, so I'm interested to see what they do next. I think it'd be really interesting to see where they take it, because there's definitely some scope for it. I watched the first kind of 20 minutes of the stream. The video, for all intents and purposes, was perfect, because you don't really need close-up detail of people reading out agendas and budgets. The audio kind of was the hardest part. You had to really kind of concentrate on the audio to get exactly what was being said. But I think they're on the way to refining that into a really good kind of model for covering those meetings.
And I think the biggest part of it is that they've been allowed to, or encouraged to, which is not always the case. It's often the polar opposite. Get out of our region, don't bring your camera to it. But, I've just sent an invite to Ali Tibbett up at Greenerleaf, who's just tweeted to say he's watching, because he's been dropping into a few of these hangouts. I'm not sure if he'll join. He might be just as happy saying hello via Twitter. But Ali, if you've got any questions, chuck them our way, or any observations from our way via Twitter or whatever. We'll probably wrap up in about 5 minutes, because I've been trying to keep these to about an hour. Seems a reasonable length, and I think other people might have similar thoughts. But any other concluding thoughts?
I think it's interesting, having spoken to Dave particularly, who's run a site for a long period of time, as we have, and he's able to kind of keep the site going, keep the news coming without having to go to lots of meetings and join lots of groups. We're the opposite end, where we were kind of felt that was our only way of actually getting the news. But both work, so it's not a case of, what I was saying earlier on, you have to be within the community to an extent in order to run what I would call a successful site. But what extent that is, I think, is up for debate. You can be very intensely involved. I mean, if someone had told me 3.5 years ago that this would have led to what I do in my personal life in my spare time and increasing my work now, I wouldn't have believed them, because it has been life-changing is maybe taking it a little bit far, but certainly lifestyle-changing. In terms of, I used to spend 4 or 5 nights a week sat at home playing around on the internet. Now I do that, reporting news, going to meetings, chairing things, and it's completely changed what I do, a lot of the time. and it's changed it for the better, definitely. Whether I'll want to do this forever, I don't know. Whether if we pulled back now from some of the groups that we're involved in and some of the meetings we went to, the site would suffer for that. It might do, or whether because we're networked now, we could actually pull back a bit and it wouldn't suffer because we've made those kind of connections. But I think it's just interesting that it works both ways. You don't have to give up all your free time in able to have a hyperlocal site that you can keep sustaining. But if you want to, you can. You'll find places to go and things to do.
I think what's interesting for us, as putting my research hat on, is there are a set of people now who have got these stories which are 2 to 3 to 4 years long of doing this, and it is interesting, I think, about that. This is how my life has changed, and it is to a degree significant or not significant, and these factors have entered my life and jobs have changed. People have got histories now around and still managed to do this activity. And Jerome and I will have to really think about a way. We'll think about two things: is that important for our research to know about that or to care about that? and how do we capture that? What's the best way to do that? This is in some ways a part of that process, but it just makes me think. I've got a story about how I've managed to keep it going by, in a way, having a degree of disinterest in all of the mechanics of how a community works. Not involving myself too much, and having little strategies to sit back from that, but still do the job. But actually, you guys are telling different stories, and then there are other people who will tell different stories. So I think those are really interesting, and it's making me think. How do I write? How do we eventually write about that in the context of what the project is doing at the big level around these ideas of creative citizenship? What's a creative citizen's life story over a 3 or 4 year period? How does the creative participation, because that's what I think our participation is, these are creative acts to a degree, how does that make them feel, and how does that change aspects of their lives? Yeah. Anyway, I'm just trying to think about what you're saying and how that plays out in terms of my work has to research and understand this better.
Yeah. You're right, Dave. I kind of I love doing these because it's just quite nice as a chat. But, and then I have little research questions that stick up in my head, and I try and jot notes. I never make enough notes. But what was I going to say? Yeah, well, I think we'll probably wrap it up there in that case. Unless there's anything you wanted to add, Guy? Anything?
I think one of the questions is.
See you, Dave. Bye.
What is a successful site, really? I think that's quite interesting to think about. So from what James perhaps was saying, you were talking about what you think is an effective site for you. I guess it raises quite a lot of questions about why people are doing it, whether they're doing it to affect change, whether they're doing it as a business, or as a pub, as partly as part of their income, if you like. I worry about my site becoming too much like a parish magazine, really. Sometimes, it's only when you get out and about and start investing time in finding out what's going on that then the more interesting stories come along. And I think what you were saying, James, about you could choose to influence things because you've got a site of a certain popularity, or you've got so many unique users or whatever. I mean, you can't not really influence things. I think it's all to do because you're selecting what you're covering all the time. Just as I can choose to cover all the things, endless stories about what the airport's doing, and that gives an overall story about what's happening there that wouldn't otherwise be aired. So, I think. Well, those are just some of the things I was thinking about during the discussion.
It's interesting because it's also a question that I jotted down, which was because you, James, at one point said something about success, and I jotted down what do you consider factors of success for you. Don't necessarily answer that now, because what I might do is pose questions about what is a successful hyperlocal and what the various people consider factors of success, and how do they, at the end of the day, think, oh, I've had a good day doing what I do with this site and things like that. I may draw that into a theme for a
That'd be
future.
interesting because I mean, I think just in the few sessions we've had already, we've discussed quite a lot of people's motivations, people's angles, and the success of these things. I think, or people's perceived success of that is tied up in that. Isn't it? You know, everybody's got a different reason for doing it, slightly different motivations, and your successes are kind of based around that, I guess.
Okay, that's great.
Like,
Sorry, like.
Just liking what he said. That's all.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were saying like ... question mark.
Yeah,
No. As
It was more of a Facebook thumbs up.
like.
Well, we're in Google. We're in G+, so it should be a +1, surely. Yeah.
I can't understand Google Plus, whatever it is.
Can you hold on?
Does my head in.
+1. There you go.
Oh.
very good.
Next week, just to start triggering what next week's going to be. I think what we're going to do next week is we're going to kind of do a what are your hyperlocal power user tools that you would like to share with other people. So it'll be a bit of a tech geek out. So anybody who wants to join us for that one, and I think it would probably be fair to say that maybe we just kind of go through one person after the other, each person doing like a 5-minute demo of a particular tool. So it might be a WordPress plugin, or it might even just be a browser plugin. It might be a particular way you use Google Plus, or a particular way you use Twitter, or actually that makes me think of something. Or it might be something completely different. It might be a video technique like Dan was speaking about in our video chat, our hyperlocal video chat the other day. So we'll say that each person gets 5 minutes, and then a couple of minutes for the questions at the end from anybody else that's in the room or online, and then we'll go on to the next person. And hopefully we'll see a lot of techie, fantastic tools.
So
to share.
does that involve sharing your screen, that kind of idea?
Yes.
Is
So
that a thing? Right.
if you've not done a screen share before, Guy, on the left, the third button down says
Screen share. Okay.
Screen share. You click on that, and then you get to pick whether you want to share the whole screen or a particular window or what, and then it shares it. And it's a really useful way of just kind of demonstrating kind of what you're talking about, showing it, and then obviously your voice carries on top. So. You're
not going to want to know about. I use Joomla, you see, and everyone else in the whole world seems to use WordPress. So I'm not going to be very interested in WordPress plugins.
But that's exactly why. That's exactly why we'd want to hear about Joomla.
Yeah. Tell us why Joomla's better.
No, so
I'm not. I didn't say it was. I mean, no point. No point.
So in that case, you want to join us next week, guys, so you can hear about great WordPress things, so you can convert. But anyway, hold that thought.
My next site might be in WordPress. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Hold that thought, and obviously nobody will be talking about Postgres. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you once again.
Really good. Oh, I'm just going to save all the chat before we lose it.
Bye.
And just make sure I'm going to get that. I believe I have.